HC 98.3 FM.
I am Mazi KK Odeluga.
Mazi Ejikeme Obasi.
Na Mazi Oke Okachuku.
This is Straight Talk Radio, the world as we see.
Coming to you from WGHC 98.3 FM. Your voice, your music, your station.
Listen to us this and every Saturday at 4 to 5 p.m. U.S. Central, and this and every Tuesday at 9 to 10 p.m. U.S. Central.
Ndewono.
Hey, Igbo Kwenu. Hey, Mono. Hey, Sotano. Hey, Pratano. Hey, Kwesun. Hey.
This is WGHC 98.3 FM.
Good afternoon and welcome to another program of Straight Talk Radio, Straight to You Talk Radio from WGHC 98.3 FM in Chicago. We ask you to kindly join us on our Facebook page, WGHC page, Facebook, where we are broadcasting live. Or you could call the studio and join in on the conversation at the number 1773-942-7163. And for those of you outside of Chicago, you could also call 7167. The same number, 773-942-7167, and join the conversation. Today we have a marvelous program for you. As you know, on this radio program, Straight Talk Radio, we talk about the news and happenings around the world from an African point of view, specifically from a Nigerian diasporan Igbo point of view. So we're coming to you live, like I said, from WGHC 98.3 FM today. So we will start our program off today by looking at some of the comments we got on Facebook. So we want to give a shout out for all of you listening to us live on Facebook, and we'll try to get your conversation started. And then you could always call in, like I said, for those outside Chicago, 563-991-3221 or 773-942-7167. One of the comments we get most often, and we get it every week, is people asking us and encouraging us to speak Igbo as much as possible. And we really want to, and we will, but part of why we mix our language a whole lot, and it seems like we speak English much more than we speak Igbo, is because we believe we have a wider audience than just those who understand Igbo. We will do our best to be able to speak in Igbo and explain in English, and then explain some of the things we say in English in Igbo, so that all the other people will join and enjoy the conversation. So, daalụ na fonde na-asị anyị na-asụ Igbo. Anyị ghọtara Igbo asụsụ be anyị, and anyị chọrọ ka nyawa Igbo bụrụ ife a na-asụ ebe niile, ka ndị na-amara Igbo wee mụọ Igbo. So anyị ga na-ekwu n'onu be anyị, na-ekwukwa n'onu oyibo. So well, last week when we talked mostly about the influence of Martin Luther King Jr. celebrating the life and legacy, since we did have a public holiday this Monday. So on Tuesday we talked about what does it mean, what it mean for us today to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. what message do we take from his struggles and his fight for civil rights, and what legacy does he leave that we should carry on, and what are the things that we should do to help. And we did talk about being able to give ourselves to a wider service of humanity, being able to give our life to something much bigger, to volunteer and help in the community that you are in, and also to fight for justice. And we have a lot of comments of people encouraging the same. And also we did talk about what does that mean in the diasporan context. And a lot of the conversation was about how we as diasporan people who leave our countries and go to other places and become immigrants, how we should bond together with the community and provide our services, provide our skills, and make our community better. So any more comments, we would like to hear it. We also talked about the news and happenings around the world. And I would like to give a shout out to Charles Echemuna, who was encouraging us to focus on developing country, that we have a puzzling migration political bias in the U.S. So I think he was saying we should put our focus to where we have more influence. And I think I may misunderstand it, but if I understand it right, he's saying that maybe the diaspora may have a larger pull in Nigeria than we do have in the U.S., and that we should focus on that. I like to disagree with that, if that's the slant. I think we have the greater pull where we live in the community we live in, and that's where we should focus our goals. So, Kosi de Tata, ba we have Basatalo Nduaye na Nigeria a whole lot. We'll talk a lot more about Nigeria and what affects Nigeria. And our topic today is we're going to look specifically at Nigeria 48 years after the end of conflict. So if you're keeping tab and if you know the history or somebody has reminded you of it, June 15th, 1970 was the day that the Biafran secessionist republic surrendered to Nigeria. That was the end of conflict in Nigeria. That was the surrender of war. That was the same day that Major General Philip F. Young gave his speech of saying that the armed forces of Biafra is disbanding. We're all going back into Nigeria. And Gowon accepted that and gave his speech regarding no victor, no vanquished, and trying to do reconstruction, reconciliation, and I forgot what the third R is. So 48 years later, after the conflict, our topic is, so 48 years later after the end of conflict in Nigeria, where is Nigeria today? What have we learned? What have we done? And since my co-hosts are on the way and will join me, if you are wanting to join in the conversation, call us at 773-942-7167 or 563-999-3221 to join in the conversation. So for those of us who are born after the war, we may not have the same okay, we do have a caller, so I'll pay attention and hear what the first caller is saying. So go ahead, caller. Please tell us your name and your question.
Oh no, this is Ejika Obasi.
This is my co-host. So it's not. So please, if you could get him on, so we could start the conversation. That's Mazi Ejike Obasi.
Yes.
So Mazi Obasi, welcome to the program. Thank
you very much.
So I was doing the introductions, and of course, I want to remind our listeners and our viewers on Facebook Live again that you are listening and viewing us on WGHC 98.3 FM. Your music, your voice, your station. And this is Straight Talk Radio. And Mazi Obasi, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So I was given the introduction that we're going to talk today about Nigeria, 48 years after the end of conflict, after the Nigerian Biafran Civil War, where we are. So what are your thoughts about any things you want to say about the war, the start, the in-between, and the finish?
Well, I think to better frame it, the conduct of the war itself, I don't think deserves much mention. It cost a lot in lives and misery. But I think what is more important is the issues of what led to this dark period in Nigerian history. What were the factors that led to the instability in Nigeria that precipitated the coup of 1967 that ended up, or 1966, that ended up resulting in the secession of Eastern Nigeria to form Biafra and subsequently the war. And I would also like to look at attempts by both the Nigerian and Biafran side to find a solution, especially as regards the meeting in Abuja, Ghana, and what derailed it. And then to look at Nigeria 40 years after the war. Have we resolved these issues? Are we better off? And have we learned any lessons from the events of that period? So I think that's kind of how we're framing this whole conversation.
Thank you very much. So I'll, my thoughts will be that it will be probably good for me to run down what I've learned since, because I would like to say I'm born after the war, not just so that I'll make myself younger, which I am trying to do, but I've learned a lot since I wasn't there during the war and I was born after the war. So for our listening audience, Nigeria became a became a nation in 1960. We gained independence October 1st, 1960 from the British. And then we had a prime minister, Alhaji Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. And our president, a ceremonial post at that time, was the Zik of Africa, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. And as we went by, with 6 short years after we had independence, there was a coup that was that while the broadcast and part of the ringleader was Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzogu. This was actually also on January 15th, 1966. So January 15th seems to carry a very significant date for Nigerians. So January 15, 1966, barely 6 years, actually 5 years and a few months after we gained independence, there was a military coup that toppled the democratic government of Nigeria. And shortly after that, there was another coup, a counter coup that also toppled the then government that was in place, which was in
the military government.
The military government. That happened in May 1967. And then shortly after the conflict started. But in between those two, in between the coup of 1966 and the coup of 1967 is what I understand to be the precipice to the war. That's where there was a lot of distrust with what happened in 1966. There was a perception that it was a tribal coup organized by a particular tribe, or at least military people from a particular tribe. And the counter coup was a retaliation of some sort of that, because people that were killed, more people from the Eastern were killed in 1967, and then a lot of other things happened there before the war. Could you help me fill in the gaps just shortly?
Yes, well, I think, like I said, a lot of the events that happened were very regrettable. But unfortunately, over the past years, a lot of misinformation has been spread regarding the, first of all, the motives of the coupists and further things. Let's start with the first, where everybody, it is generally now called a quote-unquote Igbo coup.
Right.
So, Major Kaduna Nzogu, who was actually one of the at least, if not the head, one of the most senior planners of that coup, was Igbo by birth, but lived all his life in northern Nigeria and was, for all intents and purposes, a northerner.
He was called Kaduna by people because of where he came from, right?
Yes, absolutely. And if you go and look at the planners, if you look at books that have been written, the 5 major heads of the coup books have been written that lay out exactly motives. And there was an interview with Nzogu after he was released from prison, but before the civil war actually started, where he made it categorically clear that the aim of that coup was to remove the leadership in all the regions. At that time, the northern, the western, the eastern, and the midwestern. And Nzogu said in an interview, mind you, this is before the civil war started, that he felt that the leaders that were to carry out the coup, the part of the coup in eastern Nigeria, were very inept, and he expressed great disappointment at the conduct. So the reality is, I understand why people call it an Igbo coup, because the political leadership in northern Nigeria and western Nigeria and Kotiebo from the Midwest, they were all killed in that coup. The 2 people that would have come from the east, which are Nnamdi Azikiwe, the then ceremonial president, and the prime minister, not the prime minister, sorry, the premier of eastern Nigeria, Michael Obara,
right,
were not killed. Let me be the first to say here that for Ndi Igbo, looking in hindsight, it would have been so much better for Ndi Igbo if those 2 men had been killed in 1966. Because that would have... Yes, and I know that may be a controversial thing to say, but if you look at the totality of what has happened to Ndi Igbo in Nigeria, it would have been better if those 2 men had been sacrificed for the good of the rest of Ndi Igbo.
Wow.
But be that as it may, I want to state categorically, and for anybody who is listening, it is easy, if you wish to do a little research and find out the veracity of this statement. It was not and can never be thought of as an Igbo coup except by mischief makers. So that's the beginning.
Thank you,
the second thing that is important to note, the coup was stopped primarily by Ndi Igbo.
Yes. So
go and look at the officers that were responsible for, especially in Lagos, stopping the coup plotters. Again, Nzogu again expressed disappointment at the fact that the people in Lagos did not carry out their assignment. They were stopped by an Igbo officer.
And actually, I read somewhere that it was partly thanks to Ojukwu, who was in the north at the time, that actually a lot of what was planned for the coup didn't go forward as much as they wanted it to go, because he stopped it there. I know they killed the Saduana, and they killed all the prime minister.
Mai Malari,
right.
Yes, and yes. Well, you see, and therein lies some of the difficulty we have is that a lot of people will read comments that are very, very twisted and biased. But the reality is, with a little bit of independent investigation, you can draw conclusions for yourself. I am not asking anybody to believe my position because I say so. I am asking you to go and do a little research and find out. And the good news, of course, is that a lot of the information collected by the various secret services, more especially the CIA, has now been declassified and is available to anybody who wants to go and take a look.
And for
But-
those on Facebook and for those listening to us on radio or on your TuneIn app, you are listening to WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station, and this is Straight Talk Radio. To join the conversation, call us at 773-942-7167. That is 773-942-7167. And if you're outside of Chicago, you want to call us by a different number, 563-999-3221. Once again, WGHC 98.3 FM is your station, your voice, your music, your station, and this is Straight Talk Radio. You're listening to Mazi Oke Okachukwu and Mazi Obasi discussing 48 years after the end of conflict in Nigeria. Where is Nigeria now? Mazi Obasi, before I started, I took the break. You were in the middle of something. Sorry to cut you off. You were talking about
No.
the information being declassified and available for anybody who wants to find out. And there's a whole lot of books written on all sides of this conflict and what precipitated it that people could take a hold of.
Yes.
So the conflict happens in 1967.
Yes.
There was the coup, and then the counter coup. What's your take on the counter coup of 1967?
Well, the counter coup was the motives I understand. It was felt that this was a coup. It was felt primarily by the northern officers and northern intelligentsia that this was a coup to wrest power away from the north. They were very resentful, and in fairness to them, there were events that happened in the country that stoked that resentment. But let me first say that as in general, in most parts of Nigeria, that coup was felt as a good thing. The populace at that time, most of them rejoiced.
All right, stop
because there was a lot of political anarchy, especially in Western Nigeria.
So if I could have you hold for a second, we have a caller. So, caller, when you get on, if you could turn your radio down a little bit and then tell us your name and where you're calling from. Go ahead, caller.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I thank you, Mazi Emeka Okachukwu. You can call me Big Brother Almighty.
That's right. That's my brother.
I thank you guys for this program. It's very good, very refreshing. Dr. Obasi, and I'm making it. I've been listening, and it's been very interesting. The thing is, Nigeria was divided to begin with. Nigeria was a conglomeration of a collection of tribes. Yeah, these days we don't like to say tribes, but tribes that distrusted and didn't like one another too much. This is what eventually erupted. As you very rightly pointed out, the commotion that actually eventually led to the coup started in the West, in the Southwest. This is what I believe, based on the books I've read. Nzogwu was ready and sort of a go-getter. The real brain behind the coup is actually not always mentioned in that light, but I'm not going to go into that. But Nzogwu jumped in. I read both the things he wrote and the book that is titled Why We Struck. That book is written by Colonel Ademoyega, a Yoruba man. And what was described clearly was they listed a litany of things they saw, a nucleus of army officers across Nigeria ethnic lines, saw these things as ills getting ready to befall the society. Believe it or not, back then they listed homosexuality as one of the things, among bribery, corruption, abuse of office, all kinds of things. So if you kind of get into the mindset of the coup plotters, as they were plotting this, they felt they were on a mission of morality, to rid the society of all these corrupt politicians, clear them out, hand the society back to an orderly, utopian society that will run not just on good civic laws, but on moral laws and operate on top ethics.
So, Mazio,
now,
go
ahead.
Let me ask you. So, Monday morning quarterbacking. If you look now, having the benefit of hindsight. Yes.
Right.
What would you have advised if you were in the room of those plotters from all across Nigeria, those military officers?
Okay, you used exactly the right term. Monday morning quarterbacking. When I was reading this book, what just kept occurring to me, and it's happening today, is that no matter how good a soup you're making for the community, you have to pause and ask yourself, is this where the community wants to go? Am I an extremist? Is this thing, Ejike was very right. I share that with him. People may not be comfortable saying this in mixed company, that in hindsight, you wished that those people who were targeted, who were Igbo, were killed. You would think that things would have turned out better. However, given the fact that there was already resentment and distrust, even if Zik was killed, of course, I agree Ironsi was killed, and even if Zik and Okpara were killed, I don't know that would have made the fate of the Igbo in Nigeria any different than it is today.
Okay.
That's just looking at what we've seen so far.
All right, one more question. Okay. So, given what happened then, bring it forward to now. What are what do you see from what you read and all the way to now that is still happening, that needs to happen, that shouldn't be happening?
Well, one thing that I keep that is really, really bothersome to me is that Nigeria has been run since that time till now almost exclusively by exactly the same officers that prosecuted the war. There has only been two short interruptions. The Shagari regime around 79, late 70s into 1981 or so, when Buhari, this was Buhari's first incursion into national leadership, jumped in a military coup and took over. And the one term that Jonathan did just up until 2015. Otherwise, everybody who has been so-called president or head of state of Nigeria has been among the same military officers who prosecuted the war. So Nigeria is still being run in a war mentality, with a war mentality by the same people who saw Nigeria and still see Nigeria as a divided country.
So Shagari,
what needs to happen? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that Shehu Shagari came to power in October 1st, 1979, and was overthrown by Buhari in January 1, 1984, the first few months of his second term. Okay,
exactly. I thought it was earlier, but you're right. It was in beginning of 84. And in all fairness, the way they represent it is that some officers prosecuted the military coup, took over, and then went and recruited Buhari to come take over.
It was actually Sani Abacha that actually announced the coup in December of 1984, and then Buhari took over January 1 of 1984.
Given what we know about military coups, it's very difficult to believe that somebody was just sitting somewhere smoking a cigar, minding his business, and somebody just went and took over the country and said, oh, by the way, you come and run it. But that's not the focus of this. The issue that I think we need to really pay attention to, we don't pay enough attention to it, is that until the country is wrested away from these people that have the same mentality, the same division and divide and conquer mentality until it's given actually to people of open mind, people who value equity, fairness, all of that. The country will not do well. This is kind of common sense.
Right.
It has to get away. It has to come out off the hands of anybody who was either part of the military back then or still is. Nigeria is a democratic country. The military has no business running the country. Even Buhari, who is now a quote-unquote democratic president, still operates in a military mindset. He still ignores court orders. He still issues threats and still sends the DSS, the state security, to go and arrest or harass citizens who say things that they consider anti-friendly or things of that nature. We need to get away from that mentality.
Thank you, caller. We really appreciate your contribution, and we encourage the other people listening and want to be part of the conversation to join us at 773-942-7167. Once again, this is WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station, and you're listening to Straight Talk Radio. And Mazi Obasi, while you were, I would like to hear what you thought about our last caller, especially his pivot to today and talking about the country still being run by the same old people that were part of the people that prosecuted the war, still taking care of the country and actually still running the country like they're still in a war. If you could give us a few thoughts about that.
I will. I think that's a very important point that he made, and one that it's incontrovertible. But let's take a step back. Let's take a step back and look at something that happened after the coup of Nzogwu was suppressed, and Major General Agui Ironsi became now de facto head of the country, Nigeria. What had happened was that he now basically abrogated the regional autonomy and created a strong central government.
Yes.
That was one of the very, very major issues or the major grievances that the northern officers that carried out the counter coup had, was that now that you have eliminated the leadership in the North, the West, and the Midwest, we now have a unitary government, again with an Igbo man at the head.
Run by the Supreme Military Council.
Absolutely. So, at that time, there was a counter coup. Ironsi and his host at that time, Fajui, were killed. It extended at that time virtually to the wiping out of the officer cadre of Igbo descent. And when I say Igbo, I want to point out that in those days, a lot of the southern non-Igbo indigents were generally lumped under the umbrella of Igbo.
Yes.
So current day South-South, a lot of them were also called Igbo, and they suffered together with the Igbo in a lot of things that happened then. But the point I want to make here is, so there is a counter coup. This happens. Why is it that today, how many years, 48 years after that coup, we are still running basically a unitary system of government, where the strength lies at the federal level?
We became a republic in 1963, and then in 1967 it was mostly abolished, and we have a central government which is still in place, and that's the thing that we're still using today. So we have Mazi Keke Odeluga join us, one of our other hosts. So welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
So you're listening to WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station, and this is Straight Talk Radio. We're talking about Nigeria 48 years after the conflict, after the Nigerian Biafra War. thinking through what happened then and where is the country now. So, Mazi Odeluga, you were listening to us for a while. Anything you want to share?
Yes. First of all, I want us to go back to January.
Okay.
The coup.
January 15, 1966.
Okay. That's right. It is important to recognize that was something that was going on among the ruling class. We had politicians who the military deemed, some elements of the military deemed they were corrupt. And so instead of waiting for the elections to happen again, then they decided to take matters into their hand to subvert the will of the people and to bring in whatever, their own form of government. So this was happening among the political class. The populace were never consulted. All throughout Nigeria, we are not. I'm not clear, and I've not seen and read anything pointing to the fact that the people themselves decided. But it was something that was going on within the political class. Now, the military was beginning to emerge in some countries, and Africa being one of them, having seen what happened in Egypt with the military stepping in and having a coup d'etat by Nasser. They decided, okay, maybe this is what we got to do.
As a model.
As a model. So they did that. Now, to turn around and blame a whole people for being responsible for the decisions of few elements within a political class, which now is the military, has become a political class, so to speak. It's unconscionable. It's absurd. Now, the fact that they didn't accomplish what they set out to do was their issue. If there was anybody to be punished, it should have been those who led the coup.
Well, so one of the points of the people who had the counter coup and their supporters is that although they caught Nzogwu, right, he was put in prison. He wasn't killed. So Kaduna Nzogwu prosecuted the first coup, and when Ironsi took over, they got him and they put him in prison.
Again, a decision that was made essentially by the Supreme Military Council, led by an army officer with officers from all parts of Nigeria.
He just happens to have an Igbo name.
All of them, they know the military code. They are all officers. They are gentlemen of the military. So this is an issue that is exclusively within their purview. Now, how did it get politicized is the question.
Yes.
How did it get politicized? Because, like Mazi Obasi pointed out at the beginning, that there was almost unanimous rejoicing across the country that, yes, I think good riddance to a lot of all these politicians, the waste, the corruption. I mean, nobody rejoices at the death of an individual, but this was what the reaction among the community.
It was a similar rejoicing when Rawlings took an action in Ghana.
Yes. So, but the question is, how did it get politicized? Somebody somewhere began to tell the story that this is not what it was supposed to be.
Yes.
Now we know that what the coup plotters planned to do was to change the government and bring in Awolowo, a Yoruba, to be the prime minister of the country because they loved his ideology. Meanwhile, he at that time was in prison, having been sent to prison for treason because he was plotting to overthrow the government.
Yes.
So, meanwhile, there has been no Igbo who has committed any crime against the country, period. These were people who were acting in their capacity as officers of the gentlemen of the officer. Now, then fast forward to July. People say, oh, revenge coup. Again, are you doing for who? Let's not forget that between January and July, you have May 29th, when the northern elements, including the military in the north, slaughtered and killed and committed genocide against Igbo people and Easterners mainly, generally.
It was called a riot.
Easterners, particularly the Igbos, in northern Nigeria.
Yes.
And killed close to 30,000 people, maimed them for nothing, no reason. And many have pointed out that the British government may not have been far from instigating the disinformation that this is an Igbo aggressive takeover of the government, because they had already themselves, in handing over Nigeria at independence, that their clients were going to be the House of Fulani. And so they turned over, like we know, we read the story. The man who conducted the census in Nigeria said they rigged the census to favor the North so that they have more people in parliament so that they will control the government. And that they actually literally tricked Zeke into taking the premiership, president.
The president.
Yeah. So we already know. So again, Aka, Eso, Manonu, Onu Jacob.
Yes.
So that's all I have to say about that.
So while you were talking, I found some things interesting. So one of the comments we got on Facebook for one of our shows about two programs ago was, has the Yoruba people apologized for what Awolowo did? And that puzzled me, because I'm thinking, why would Yoruba people apologize for what Awolowo did? Awolowo, if he did anything, should be the one apologizing for. So there is a mistrust that was there that made the atmosphere possible for even the rioters in the north that maimed and killed a whole tribe of people for something they had no hand in. And the same mistrust seems to carry through today, that somebody is still asking if Yoruba people should apologize for what Awolowo, who was a single citizen, just happens to be of Yoruba tribe, did, he allegedly did to Ndibo during the war.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the mistrust? Is it more? Is it less? Is it something we should let go or work through?
If I may come in here.
Yes.
I think, Mazi, okay, you go to the heart of the problem we have in Nigeria. We take events and we generalize it, we whip up sentiment, and very soon it is blown out of proportion. I absolutely agree with you. Awolowo did not act after consulting every single Yoruba man living across the nation. His actions were his actions as part of the federal government of Nigeria.
Yes.
If we are to hold anybody accountable, we hold him accountable first, and after him, the government that employed him, that he served.
Yes.
You cannot hold the whole Yoruba people accountable for something like that. Just like we, Ndibo, are saying that Ndi Awusa cannot hold Ndibo responsible for the actions of Kaduna Njowu and his fellow coupists. But beyond that, I wanted to look into something that maybe we should maybe talk about, is the question of, after the coup and the counter coup, there was a very strong push by northern Nigeria to leave the Union.
Actually, my region suggested that the coup of 1967, the motive for Murtala Muhammad was that after the coup, they're going to secede from Nigeria. The North was just going to go and leave the rest of the people who want Nigeria for themselves. And he was talked out of it by our colonial masters, former colonial masters, who told him that wasn't the way to go.
Which goes back to what Mazi Odeluga has said, that there were strings in the background. There were puppet masters in the background pulling the strings. It is not at all. It is well known to anybody who understands and who studies Nigerian history that a lot of problems we have had in Nigeria start from England. It is the British Foreign Service that is directly responsible, and I will continue to hold them personally responsible for a lot of the issues that have happened in Nigeria that have left us the way we are today.
Now,
but the question I had wanted to ask was, so we are looking at Nigeria 48 years after the civil war that was fought to keep Nigeria one. 48 years later, are we closer to being a nation? And should we begin to look at seriously, where are the fault lines? What is it that makes it impossible for Nigeria to begin to behave and move in the direction of a cohesive nation?
Okay.
Yes.
I have a take on that. If the mantra for Gowon was to keep Nigeria one, is a task that must be done.
Yep.
That's fine. Question: What is your vision for keeping Nigeria one, or is this just that you want the eastern region back with the oil fields? Like Mazi Oke said, the people who prosecuted the war, first of all, it is not in their DNA to see a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious Nigeria that is one. So they took over government in July 29th, 1966, with the central theme of Araba, secession. And we're ready to go. That is why the negotiations that brought Gowon to leadership took more than 3 days. It was on August 1st.
Because the Cook Murtala wanted to be the guy.
That's right. They wanted to go. They wanted to go. And so they had to take a little convincing to now stay and then to put forward Gowon. The idea being that by putting Gowon forward, then it would, as a Christian, it will not be seen
Christian Northerner.
A Christian Northerner. It will not be seen as a Muslim jihadist movement. So Gowon took over. Did they have in their DNA, do they have within them this concept of national government? No, because historically, you have to look at the way the North had functioned within the Nigerian political space. From the time of the Northern and Southern Protectorate up until the amalgamation, the North have always stayed away from anything national. It was not up until 1945 that the North sent a delegation to the National Legislative Council. This National Legislative Council was something that was put together by the colonial government as a place of meeting for all Nigerians who were kind of like to represent their different ethnic groups. The North would not come. Sardauna had made it clear that he's not interested in a nation, Nigerian nation. 1954, when the movement for independence started, the North said they weren't ready. 57, they said they were not ready. They don't want to didn't want to be joined to a southern that have different culture, different religion, people they don't understand. And their reason was we don't have enough people to actually compete with the rest of the regions that you are bringing. That's why from the richest constitution, the West was autonomous, the East was autonomous. So what's my point? The North has never had a vision for a cohesive one Nigeria. It is a Nigeria that is dominated by the North. And believe you me, that was what was sold to them by the British, that we will hand over power to you and we'll make sure that we'll beef you up in the army, and so that they control the military, so the infantry base and all that, because the officer corps was dominated by other Nigerians who went to school.
So I'll fast forward this because we're being chased by time. By the way, you're listening to WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station, and this is Straight Talk Radio.
The world as we see it.
Thank you. And we are talking about 48 years after the end of conflict, the Nigerian-Biafran conflict. It's never a topic that you could discuss in one show, so believe you me, we'll have plenty of time to talk about this some more. So we've talked about the coup that precipitated another coup that precipitated the war. So something you said made me want to go back to what happened trying to avert the war. So there are many conferences, and one of them was in Aburi, Ghana.
Yes.
Where there was some agreement, at least 3-point agenda, according to, if you count how the Nigerians usually do the agenda. There was Aburi Accord that was agreed to, and then it fell apart. So a lot of times people tell me it's because there was still mistrust. Nobody actually agreed that each side was going to keep their word. But then it shows up again that we do have players behind the players. I'm well ending on that actually make it fall apart. That we're not really Nigerians, that didn't have the Nigerian national interest at heart, but actually had their own interest at heart. Mazi Obasi, any thoughts?
Let me point out first of all that the Aburi Accord was a solution to an African problem discussed by Africans and agreed to by Africans. In Aburi, Ghana, the principal actors following the counter coup were all present. They deliberated and agreed on a way forward.
And I hear the atmosphere was jovial and camaraderie.
Very
when they
cordial.
Yes.
And if people care to, you can Google. There have been discussions by Ojukwu has talked about it, and other people that were there have talked about it. They come back to Nigeria and everything falls apart. Today, if you look at the agitation in many parts of Nigeria, it is along the very same lines or very similar to some of the agreements that were reached in Aburi, Ghana. So, basically, anybody who loves that country must then ask the question, why was the agreement reneged on? Why? To whose benefit was it that agreement was reneged on? Because you realize that it was after that war became essentially inevitable.
So if I could summarize the three agreements, actually I remember two of the three. One was that every decision, any decision that's made about the country must go through the Supreme Military Council. That's right. That all the governors and the Supreme and the rest of the cabinets on the federal level will be part of it and have to contribute to it. The second was that any of the declarations that were made since 1966 up to the date that they were meeting will be nullified and will become null and void, will not be part of the law anymore. And Mazi Keke, do you remember the third?
Regional autonomy.
Regional autonomy.
At
least the
and Ojukwu asked
the description of the interpretation of regional authority, because that was the one that was disagreed on. Or at least some people's interpretation of that is different than.
It's the fortunate thing and the unfortunate thing about this.
There were minutes.
Yes. It was recorded.
Yes.
The Eastern region at that time published a full text, the audio. This was played live. People heard the conversations, people heard the decisions that were made. Gowon today, if he wants to be remembered differently in history, because now his history is very solid and is soiled, is embarrassing, he needs to stand up and speak the truth.
Yes.
You see, Nigeria is the way it is because people have moved away from truth. The truth be told that the solution for Nigeria was arrived at amicably without any shot fired at Aburi.
Well, Gowon says that he came home and Ojukwu arrogantly went and made the broadcast before him because he was sick for a few days and couldn't talk.
No, it wasn't. You see, that's what he said, that Ojukwu jumped the gun and now said what was discussed.
Yes.
You see, yes.
If we had a consensus, all you needed to say was,
Denzioku, because there were records and people were there.
Yes.
What many believe that happened was some of the super pump secs who were running the show for them in Lagos
Yes.
said, why did you agree on it? Because I heard Ojukwu went to the conference prepared. He had his advisors with him. He had his
Some of the preambles was him asking about what he thought was going on, that Nigeria was preparing for war, buying from Soviet, and somebody tried to deny it, but Gowon got up and said, yes, the military bought some equipment, and they're going to distribute to everywhere in Nigeria, including to your Eastern Central.
So, and then it was at Aburi for the first time that Gowon told the world, literally, what happened to Agui Ironsi. Because part of Ojukwu's contention was, you cannot have a new leader when you've not told us what happened to the Supreme Commander. And so until we know that he's dead and out, then you can find a replacement. And then if we're going to find a replacement, it's not Gowon that is somebody of a higher rank.
It's Ogundipe.
Ogundipe, who was of Yoruba extraction. Yes. So that Ogundipe was going to take the position. So he had nothing personal against Gowon other than military order must be followed. A due process. And he said, what happened to my commander-in-chief? You need to tell us. So it was at Aburi that for the first time everybody heard what happened, that they killed him. And so it was then that they identified the grave, and then he was brought, then they went and exhumed his body from where he was buried in a shallow grave, and then brought and give him burial. But also, Ojukwu asked the question, what about the internally displaced people, those Easterners that have come from the north? Remember that it was under still the mandate of Ironsi that you had the genocide of 66, yes. May 66, 2966. Then, of course, during the July coup, they continued the genocide against the Igbo in the north. And in fact, all throughout the south too, because a lot of Igbo officers were killed in Ikeja, Igbo people were killed in Ibadan, and so again, all throughout the country, the Igbo was vulnerable, and so a lot came out of Aburi, and hopefully at some point we need to maybe devote a program to Aburi because and digest it. It was it was just an example of African diplomacy, Africans having solutions for African problems.
So we have a few minutes left to go on WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station, and you're listening to Straight Talk Radio. Mazi Obasi. So we started off saying 48 years after the end of conflict in Nigeria. Where are we? Could you help us sort out where we are today?
We are exactly where we were 48 years ago.
Thank you.
I don't think anything has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you permit me, I would like to posit something. Perhaps it is time that we put sentiment aside and begin to really look at Nigeria in terms of, is this a workable project? And it's not in terms of semantics, it's not in terms of looking for political gain, to really ask ourselves, are we able to become a nation as in a true nation state, where every citizen feels a sense of ownership regardless of where you reside? Because I think if you don't answer that question, or if that question is not answered in the affirmative, everything else we're doing, like my friend Mo would say, is just embellishment. We're all wasting our time.
Thank you, sir. Mazi KK, any comments?
Yeah, I agree with Mazi Obasi that it's important that we take sentiments apart. And if you ask me, 48 years after, I will even go back from 1966. We're back where we are with 1967, actually. We're back where we are with Nigeria in disarray, sentiments running around. Gowon said something on August 1st, 1966. He said, there is no basis, given what has happened, there is no basis for Nigeria unity.
Okay, thank you for listening to our program. One thing I want to leave you with, those guys who were part of the war were in their 30s, in their mid-30s during the war. And now they are 70-something, and they are still all here, well, for the ones that are remaining. So we'll catch you next time on our program, Straight Talk Radio on WGHC 98.3 FM. And enjoy your evening, and God save us all.